Yeah! Welcome. This is Michelle Godin of Baldy and The Blonde, riding solo today because the bald guy travels more than, I don't know, most billionaires, I think. He's in Costa Rica as far as I know. Anyway, so today we are going to talk about the serious problem, I think, that we are facing in America. No news to anybody, and the title of the show today is America on Thin Ice. Pun intended. So, you know, we've seen, unfortunately, the fact that frankly, I just don't understand it, but a rebellion against enforcement of the law. So we've had immigration laws in this country forever, and they were enforced forever. More people were deported by Barack Obama, 4 times more than have been deported by President Trump. Same with most presidents before. And, I mean, you can look online and find, I saw CNN riding around with ICE in 2016 during Obama's term, praising ICE and looking at what a great job they were doing getting illegals out of here. But things have radically changed, and it might all have to do with the growing threat of communism in this country. Last week we had 2 people who actually personally experienced losses due to communism in their families. Elena and Gisela Chevalier, both from Cuba, lost everything. And look at Cuba now. It's a disaster. They have ancient cars, no food, no medicine, no nothing. But all of them are poor because it's equal in communism, right? No middle class. Everybody's poor except the head honchos, and you know they all live the lives of kings. For example, take a look at His Highness in New York City, Mamdani, living in some swanky place, and his mom's loaded. And, meanwhile, he plans, I believe, to destroy the property market. They always go after private property, one of the hallmarks of communism. But, you know, if you look at their platform, it certainly includes, and I'll just read it directly so you can be sure I am quoting them, but this comes from the Democrat Socialist of America political platform: immigration. Grant immediate and unconditional amnesty for all immigrants, regardless of current immigration status. That means if they have a deportation order, if they've been convicted of rape and murder, as many of the ones with deportation orders have, they get immediate amnesty. And are we seeing that in play today? Because what has changed from the time of a few years ago, where all Democrats were for closed borders and deportation, to now, where it's somehow racist bigotry to demand enforcement of our law? Hold on one second. Can we close that door? Or is it closed? Yes. Sorry, it's something really loud out there. Anyway, I don't know what's happened, but something has. And at the same time, you're met with this aghast reaction from the left when you're merely taking what I think is quite a moderate position, which is we have immigration laws. They need to be enforced. And now we have the complication of not just a normal immigration situation, but the fact that the last president, Mr. Dementia, Mr. Ice Cream Cone, allowed 20 million people into this country. And just compare, let's just take a little sidestep and see who's free in this country. Is it the people who got to flow through the border during the time that Americans were having to use vaccine passports, have mandatory experimental shots injected into their body on false medical pretenses, could not go anywhere or do anything, were on lockdown, small businesses closing by the thousands, while Walmart, porn stars, and casinos were allowed to stay open and flourish. Little people who owned a little couple of rental properties had to keep paying their mortgage, but their tenants didn't have to pay. All of those things were designed to destroy the middle class. Over what? A cold, basically. A cold for which they said, oh, the virus can be stopped by a vaccine, but that wasn't true, was it? No, but nonetheless, you were forced to get it. So, meanwhile, the 20 million people that entered our country, we don't know who they are, we don't know where they come from. They come from, some of them from failed states, some of them are no doubt terrorists. I believe we've heard that at least 2,000 to 8,000 are actual terrorists, and they're in our country. God knows, waiting for their orders. So, who's free and who's not? So the fact that nowadays, if you are a person who believes that we are to honor the law of the land, you're considered by the left to be some kind of fascist, racist, whatever the term of the week is. Meanwhile, we know that in Minneapolis, for example, the Somali community, which was imported by the zillions, has just ripped off American taxpayers to the tune of, last count I saw, $9 billion. $9 billion. And these are people that do not want to assimilate. I'm not saying all of them, but as a giant group, the call to prayer 5 times a day as though they were under Sharia law in Minneapolis. But most of all, most importantly, the fact that they are running these scam companies. Meanwhile, you, me, and the regular Americans are working round the clock, 2 jobs, lots of people, 3 some, in order to support graft and corruption, largely due, in Minneapolis, for example, to illegal immigration. What are we doing? In case you forget, I'll just play, let's see, I'll just pick any one of them. I have all kinds of clips here. Let's go with Bill Clinton on immigration. A Democrat, of course.
All Americans are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers.
Yep.
That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before.
Criminal aliens. Imagine if you use that term now. Okay. So, I mean, and that was just what? Not long ago. And then there's similar kind of quotes from Hillary Clinton, even Nancy Pelosi. I couldn't clip it. I couldn't figure out how to clip it. But there's one of Nancy Pelosi ranting and raving about the same topic. What changed? What changed? So now, fast forward to these leftist groups latching onto the illegal immigration idea as though it is, I don't know, the Civil Rights March of 2026. It is the civil rights issue. But the fact of the matter is, it's against the law. Illegal immigration is against the law. Do I hear anybody saying we need to change the law and just open the borders? No, I don't see that. So I don't know what's going on and why, for these people, this has become the cause celeb, but it has. So now we have, and we'll get into this in the next segment, but now we have literally armies in cities around the United States fighting against the United States. Now, I did study actual history. I don't know what they teach kids nowadays, but that is Civil War. You have the governor, Tim Walz, who has actually called for the National Guard to fight the ICE. He's calling in the National Guard to stand down ICE, and he is at war, I believe that's a quote, with the federal government. I don't know how that's going to work out, but to me, President Trump he should have issued by now the Insurrection Act and brought in the National Guard himself. Of course, I'm sure he's concerned that the federal judges in Minnesota would overrule his clear authority to do that. But that's where we are now. So now we are confronted with the certainly should have been anticipated death, and probably not the only death that we're going to see as a result of maniacs training as though they are prepared to fight armed and trained law enforcement. And that's what's going on in Minnesota. This woman, Miss Good, was actually trained, supposedly, by the Minnesota anti-ICE group. And I'll just say that if somebody came to me with that case, I'd take it, because they have no business training a 37-year-old woman how to fight law enforcement. It's insane. It's against the law. Welcome back to Baldy and The Blonde. I'm Michelle Godin, running solo today, and we are talking about America on thin ice. What is going on in this country where what was previously accepted and is currently still the law of the land has now become the flashpoint for leftists all over this country? I already played the clip of Bill Clinton talking about we need to deport more illegal aliens. I don't really want to bore you with all the clips, but Hillary 2008, if they committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone. Obama 2014, you'll be deported, sent back. Bill Clinton in 95 gets a standing ovation by his party for speeding up deportation and securing our borders. So it wasn't racism back then. It was just the law. It's still the law. But I think it's because the Democrats can't win anymore, so they need to import voters and pay them off like they have the Somalians. Meanwhile, for regular Americans, lock them down, censor them, election fraud, J6, throw them in jail. Meanwhile, Antifa and these people can do whatever they want. So something's wrong, and if you don't like the law, you need to change the law. But to create a country that is just going to flaunt immigration law, you're going to end up with terrible situations like Miss Good, who was killed in Minneapolis because she was engaged in not protest. She was interfering in law enforcement. And I am as a lawyer, I am no lover of any sort of overbearing police authority. I have represented people that were beaten up by the police and won. I only take cases that are legit. But this is craziness. So apparently Miss Good's child, she has 3 children, 2 of whom are with her ex-husband in another state. She has 1 child in Minneapolis, and that child was apparently in school. And through that school, what I've read is that she joined some sort of group they referred her to, which was a group to stand up against ICE. Okay, that literally means you're going to stand up against the enforcement of the law. Not cops beating up people randomly, or you drive down the street and see a cop beating the heck out of somebody. Yeah, you might stop and see what's going on. Even then, you're taking a chance with your life. But in this case, they are going out with whistles. They were told one of the things that she was trained to do was to sit on her horn, which, if you've seen the long video, before anything starts, she's sitting on her horn, dancing, like making a sort of a dance beat. And that's one of the things she was trained to do. So, then when the police ask her to get out the car, she does not. The other policeman walks around to the front, and she then backs up her car, stops the car, goes forward, the wheels spin a little bit, and she definitely hit that officer who shot her. Now, does anybody want that to happen? No. But if you put yourself in that situation, you are putting your life at risk as well as other people's lives, whether it's the people who the police are there to arrest, whether it's yourself, whether it's other policemen, whether it's other people on the street, because she guns the car because her wife said, let me think of the exact words, drive, baby, drive. And she does, directly into the officer in front of her. So, and then I've heard people say, well, a police officer should never be in front of the car, but you can go look up the case of Detective Amy Caprio in Baltimore in 2018. Very similar circumstances. This poor police officer follows a guy who she thinks is suspected of something, gets him in a cul-de-sac where he can't get out. She sort of angles her car, tells him to get out the car. She's standing in front of the car with a gun on him. He opens the door, but instead of getting out, he guns it and runs over her, and she dies an agonizing and slow death in the street as a result of being run over. And she was to the far right of the car, just like Officer Good was. I mean, I forget his name. The officer that Miss Good was shot by. So these are dangerous situations fraught with tension, and you cannot just walk into them untrained. Some mama who now thinks she's, I don't know, with the, Wild West posse. It's crazy, and they are there to enforce the law. So she was there to obstruct that. And that is just not a good idea, folks. And I have a clip I'd like to play from. This is from the Chicago police chief. And he gave this statement back in October, which I think is worth playing all the way through because it's good advice for anybody who's thinking of, getting a couple of weeks of training from some purple-haired leftist as to how to obstruct police operations is a very bad idea, and I think he gives very sound advice, and certainly he is not from a liberal city, and he himself is certainly not a liberal. Here you go.
Federal agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you. We need to be clear about these laws. We cannot become a society where we just decide to take everything in our own hands and start to commit crimes against law enforcement. It is a crime. You may not like what they're doing. I can understand that there's a lot of emotions out there, but that does not mean that you get to commit a crime, especially one that could lead to deadly force. We need to keep everyone safe. Our responsibilities when it comes to federal agents, and I've been asked these questions, we do not interfere with the duties and responsibilities of federal agents.
I think that's pretty clear, and that's coming from the chief of police of Chicago back in October, and his advice, had it been heeded, nobody would be dead right now. But I'm afraid that the left wants martyrs to gin up the cause, and that's what they're looking for, so don't be one. This is Michelle Godin. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Baldy and the Blonde. I'm Michelle Godin, here every Wednesday at 4, and you can hear all of our shows at baldyandtheblonde.com. We are talking today about America being on thin ice. We have immigration laws that previously everyone agreed needed to be enforced. We were then flooded with 20 million unvetted, unvaxxed freebirds from God knows where, since we have no paperwork. But you see, the Democrats are very smart that way. They know that Americans are kind-hearted people and that it would be very hard once they let them in, completely flaunting the law. And, of course, Republicans did nothing because we're real good at that. It would be so hard to get them out. And it is. And the only thing you'll ever see on the news are some poor old lady who's been here for 20 years and she just didn't fill out the right paper. But meanwhile, Tren de Aragua, rapists, killers, etc. What about it? So what? We don't need to get them. Well, in the past, we had an interest in doing that. And as I've said in every segment, the Democrats, including Obama, the god, deported 4 times more than Trump has. And also, isn't it a little bizarre, the wild protests from the left for a woman who literally put herself in that situation, which, again, no one wishes for these people to be killed or to be hurt while doing what they think is okay, but it's not. That's why I played the clip from the Chicago Police Department telling you that you cannot interfere with law enforcement. You can stand on the streets and protest all you want, all day long. Of course, you didn't when they were flooding the country illegally, and you didn't when Obama deported them, and you didn't when any Democrat deported them. But okay, whatever. But you cannot interfere. You are being used by the Democrat Party as pawns to gin up support for illegal immigration in order to increase the electoral college votes and to increase their chances of winning, because they don't stand for anything except we hate Trump and we're for illegal aliens. We're for them getting all your money, all your tax dollars, but we need some patsies to get them all riled up and on the streets like poor Miss Good. Give her a couple of hours training, make her think she's somehow a member of the posse and that she's going to stop law enforcement with her whistles and her horns and blocking traffic. I mean, it's insane, and a lawsuit needs to be filed against these organizations who are convincing pathetic, well-meaning but pathetic Americans from putting their bodies in harm's way. I mean, this woman had children. She had every reason to put her kids first, not to pretend that she's part of some outlaw group who's going to stop the law. And she was not trained for that job. She had no idea what she was doing, but she was told by somebody, and I guarantee you, somebody was making a lot of money training these people for their Wild West antics. So she's dead because somebody told her to do this, and she believed that it was within her capabilities because she was trained. Do not fall for this. If you want wildly out of control, rampant immigration and open borders, then go get a law passed, because the law right now does not say that. And furthermore, what about all the people who were murdered viciously by illegal aliens? I mean, what about them? I haven't seen anybody march in the streets for poor Laken Riley or any of these. What about the 12-year-old girl from Texas? Nothing. Not a word. And frankly, it's because who's going to, the left isn't going to march for them. They don't care. And the right is busy working to support Somalia. I mean, all right, I'm going to play a clip from somebody that I think is really good, YouTuber and Facebook. Her name is Brittany Hughes, and she does a nice summary here about lack of concern for the people that were killed.
So I just want to get this straight here. Laken Riley was attacked and assaulted and beaten to death so badly that her skull was caved in and she wasn't even recognizable.
Heard that? So badly that her skull was caved in and she was not recognizable by an illegal alien killer. All right, continue. Let's see. Whoops.
So I just want to get this straight here. Laken Riley was attacked and assaulted and beaten to death so badly that her skull was caved in and she wasn't even recognizable. Jocelyn Nungaray was 12 years old when she was raped and strangled to death under a bridge. Rachel Morin was also a 37-year-old mom when she was attacked and raped and beaten to death and left.
Rachel Morin was the lady that had 4 children that was out jogging, where she jogged every day. Just another victim of the privileged class of illegal aliens.
Beside a jogging trail, all by illegal aliens who shouldn't have even been in this country in the first place. And there were no protests for them. The left didn't care. The media didn't care. Democrats wouldn't even stand up in Congress for their names. But y'all will gather by the thousands and stomp through the streets after a woman was shot by ICE after it looks like she hit one of them with her car. Look, I don't want to see a woman dead in her car, but she's dead because she was out in the street in a city she didn't even live in, LARPing like she was the hero in Schindler's List. This is not a video game. You're not playing Call of Duty and killing Nazis. Illegal immigration has an actual effect on this country. Consequences on crime, on housing, on our job market, on our economy, and on our highway safety. It is not your stage on which to play hero just because you're a first world white woman with nothing better to do with your time who wants to feel so desperately like you're a part of something. Immigration officers are not the bad guys. The bad guys are the drug dealers and the human traffickers and the criminals who rape children and women and leave them dead beside hiking trails. And if liberals had any sense whatsoever, that's what they would be upset about. So,
yep, I agree, 100%. LARPers, that's what they are. But please, somebody take that lady's lawsuit, Miss Good versus whoever trained her to be a vigilante, and let her think that she was safe because she had been so well trained. Because it's unconscionable and disgusting. So, yeah, it's just bad. So let's see. I think it'd probably be worth playing Barack Obama talking about illegal immigration. It's hard to say which one I should go with, but okay, here we go.
This administration, the Bush administration, has done nothing to control the problem that we have. We've had 5 million undocumented workers come over the borders since George Bush took office.
Can you believe that? He's scolding when he's running for office. He's scolding Bush for letting 5 million illegals in. I mean, it's like we're living in the Twilight Zone, because now I guess the position of the left is everyone can come here. We, the middle class, will not exist because we will give our money to Somalians and Laotians and whoever, and they can do whatever they want. But just remember, when people tell you you're a racist, you're an Islamophobe, you're a this phobe, you're a that, no. You are following the law, as every Democrat and Republican has for the history of the country. These people have the new idea to flood the country with illegals. And I mean, just ask yourself why. Why is that? I mean, I ask myself that all the time, and it seems to me that it's for political power. And they don't care about the left or right constituents who are suffering as a result of the resources being sucked up by a huge invasion of 20 million people in 4 years. That's unheard of. And it's unsustainable, and we are suffering. We have a lack of housing. We have people taking jobs, and don't kid yourself. There's a lot of Republicans that love this because they have big corporations, and they'd much rather pay slave wages to undocumented workers than pay Americans a fair wage. So you are being hoodwinked so that the Democrats, who can't seem to think of any reason for people to reelect them, are bringing in new voters. That's basically it. And they pay them. All right, going back to President Barack Obama. Here we go.
It has become an extraordinary problem. And the reason the American people are concerned is because they are seeing their own economic position slip away.
Yep.
And oftentimes, employers are exploiting these undocumented workers. They're not paying the minimum wage. They're not observing worker safety laws. As president, I will make sure that we finally have the kind of border security that we need.
I mean, I'd vote for that guy, right? What happened? What has happened to the Democrat Party? They used to be for free speech. If anyone doesn't remember, they're the ones that censored us for 4 years under Biden, literally had a pipeline from the FBI jokers to social media, taking down doctors who said, I don't really think this vaccine's necessary. Whoop, you're off. People that complained about censorship, in America, gone off Facebook. I don't know what's happened, but that used to be their thing. We're for freedom. We're for freedom of speech. We're for closed borders. Now, open borders, censor the Americans. The only free people are the illegals. And we will be right back to close off after this. BaldyandTheBlonde.com.
Tired of waiting for dinner? Meet Brava, the revolutionary countertop oven that uses pure light to cook your food hotter, faster, and with incredible precision. With 3 independent cooking zones and powerful searing, Brava cooks meals 2 to 4 times faster than traditional ovens. No preheating, no guesswork. And now for a limited time, enter Chew on This at checkout and get $200 off your Brava oven. Brava, pure light, perfect food. Shop now at brava.com.
Hi, this is Kate Delaney from America Tonight. The show kicks on at midnight, and I'm loving the overwhelming support in New Orleans. What a group of fantastic listeners here on WGSO 990 AM. Join me every morning to catch up on what I call the buzz in your backyard and mine. You'll hear some of the most interesting people on the planet from the world of business, politics, sports, and, well, just intriguing people with a story to tell. If you're around, give us a call. Don't worry, I'll spit out the number plenty of times on the air. Let's agree to meet at midnight right here on WGSO 990 AM in New Orleans.
Hey folks, it's Jeff Cruere. I've been with WGSO for 17 years as host and now president and general manager. WGSO is a community-based radio station, a nonprofit, locally operated. We believe in cultivating local talent and emphasizing local programs. If you have an interest in hosting your own program, then we have some prime spots available for you. Take advantage of this great offer. Email me at jeff@wgso.com or call me at 504-669-6076. Come fulfill your radio dreams at WGSO.
Hi, this is Susan Berniker bringing you a new show, Health Connections, every Wednesday afternoon at 5 p.m. when we explore health from doctors, researchers, scientists, naturopaths, pharmacists, authors, fitness, and more. You'll be able to call in and ask your own health questions. So join me, Susan Berniker, every Wednesday at 5 p.m. right here on WGSO 990 AM with Health Connections.
Hey folks, the Mike Church Show is moving back to mornings. Faster than you can say, LSU is CWS and Jello Shot World Champions. 6 to 7 a.m. on WGSO and CrusadeChannel.com.
Hey Mimi, we love Wednesdays, but we're moving to a new time.
Listen to He Said, She Said, Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
As usual, we'll be discussing and debating the hot topics.
And taking your phone calls.
You can find out who's right. Of course, that's me.
No, wait, Jeff, I'm never wrong. Remember, happy wife, happy life.
So we'll have a lot to talk about on He Said, She Said.
Listen to the Crew of Cruere Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
Right here on WGSO.
Don't miss Chew on This with Don Clement and Patty B. 1 p.m. Saturdays on WGSO 990 AM and WGSO.com. New time, same great flavor.
Don't get stuck in boring talk radio. Give it a much-needed splash of laughs and a little Southern Louisiana flavor. The Implicit Bias Radio Show. Every Saturday morning, 7 to 9 a.m. on WGSO 990 AM.
Welcome back to Baldy and the Blonde. I'm Michelle Godin, i.e. not the bald one. And I have been on a tear today about America being on thin ice because I'm very concerned about what our country is doing right now. We have literally not protesters, but small armies, going against American law. We have cities that think they can scoff at American law. And unlike some laws where I think the federal government is interfering in state business, because I tend to be a believer in the republic, which means states, can have their own rules and the federal government is supposed to be limited. One of the few things the federal government is actually clearly in charge of is border security. I mean, you can see that, right? Each state can have different immigration laws. But what we have right now is a revolution within of a small but very active group of cities that refuse to follow immigration law. And there doesn't seem to be any recognition of the fact that if you don't like the law, you need to change the law. You can't have blood in the streets fighting law enforcement who, it's not like they're there doing some extracurricular activity. They're there to enforce the law. And you have heard, and I could go on, I have Hillary Clinton, we've heard Barack Obama today actually fussing at George Bush for letting 5 million people into the country and that he was going to stop that. You've heard many times on this show, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, all of them in the past clearly saying immigration law needs to be enforced. I don't know what to say about what's happened except Democrats are out of ideas. They have nothing to offer except that they hate Trump. And so the only people they can sell this to is illegals who they pay off to, with our tax dollars, like in Minnesota. And then, of course, they're also against election integrity, where in a country where you have to show your ID basically to use a public bathroom. I mean, certainly to do anything, you have to have an ID. But the Democrats are against that for voting, and actually have the nerve to insult black people by acting like they don't have IDs. I don't know if y'all have seen those interviews of black people in New York, like, what do you mean we don't have IDs? Of course we have IDs. We're Americans, we live here, we have to, yes, of course we have IDs. So it's all BS, and it's all about power. So we're going to import a new group of voters. We will pay them to vote for us. We will oppose any sort of election integrity. We will get more seats in Congress because, unfortunately, we count illegals to determine how many seats you get in Congress, which is ridiculous and needs to go away as well. But anyway, I just don't know where it's headed, but I just want to strongly encourage everybody to sit down and take a big, deep breath before you get involved with these cuckoo groups who are going to send you out on death missions, unprepared, like Miss Good was sent. And any of you groups that are listening that think you're trainers of poor, unsuspecting, good-hearted Americans trying to stand up, although I think improperly, but nonetheless, people have a right to their opinions. Anybody who's training them to go into the line of fire should be sued for every cent they have. Unfortunately, it's probably all tax dollars because they're probably all living off some NGO underground, sending to another NGO, sending to, open society. God only knows how they're getting their money, but I'm pretty sure there's some tax dollars involved. And so ultimately, I do think a lawsuit against these people for improper training, might have some merit, even though the taxpayer would probably fund the verdict, right? So it's just not a good idea, folks. If you want change, you don't approve. If you want the borders of the United States to be open, and you are willing to have both a welfare state and open borders, the two things can't exist. But if you think they should, time to go to Congress and change the law. The place to change the law is not in the streets with housewives, blowing their horns and whistles. It's just ridiculous, and it's going to get more people killed. And guess what? That's what your handlers and your elitist workers want for you. They want more blood in the streets. They need George Floyd's. They need Miss Cook. They need some kind of event that they can hyperventilate and use to generate the kind of enthusiasm that their policies do not generate. So you can have your own opinion on whether or not you want open borders and 20 million people every 2 years, but the place to fight it out is not on the streets. You make these big NGOs, they can handle it themselves, okay? Not put Mama Good on the streets with her wife in her minivan to fight the cops. And it's not fair to the cops either. And ICE is law enforcement doing their job. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to them to be confronted with people boxing them in, and that's what's been going on all over the country. They follow them. Like, these people have followed ICE for days and then box them in. You've seen all the videos on social media. That's what they do, and, it's just asking. It's asking for more people to be killed, and unfortunately, you are just a pawn in the game because that's what they want, They want a reason to get people riled up. And, meanwhile, there has to be at least some consideration for the fact that Americans have suffered economically, as Barack Obama said, as a result of illegal immigrants who, as he said, lower Americans' wages and are exploited. The bleeding heart, the illegals are exploited by companies who can pay them less, don't have to give them health care, just, like they would have to if they hired Americans. So I don't see how it's in anyone's interest to flaunt the law, to sign up with these kook groups, to pretend that you're, part of a posse, and it's not a good idea. So that's it for today on that topic. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, we have an app now at WGSO. You can just go to the App Store, type in WGSO, and you can download the app. And it becomes, much easier to listen to the show. You don't have to be in your car looking or trying to catch the show on the radio. And you can also, of course, anytime go to baldyandtheblonde.com, and you will be able to listen to all of our shows. They're all archived there. And, this is a show that I started with Tom back in 2008 because of what I saw as the increasing assault on liberty. And we were on the air from 2008 to 2012. At that time, we mostly focused on a pretty high-profile libertarian-type guest like Congressman Ron Paul, Senator Rand Paul, Pat Buchanan, Andrew Napolitano, Jesse Ventura, lots and lots of very, high-profile libertarians. And in this reincarnation of the show, we haven't done as much with the guest. It's just enough to try to keep up with the encroachment on all of our liberties. And I know that tensions are out there and people are mad, but the bottom line is, folks, the rights that are being stolen in terms of free speech are being stolen from all of us, not just the right, not just the left. It so happens that in recent years, the persecution has been mostly towards the right, but that could swing. So we are absolutely all Americans, and we need to stand together. We can't be fighting our legislative battles in the streets. It's going to end bad, and I think there are people that want a civil war in this country. And, I'm not one of them, and I don't think most of us are. So with that, let's try to get America off thin ice and pray for our country, calm down,